Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, and it's that time again now for object-oriented programming, meaning how do we make objects in Ruby? Okay, so let's think about it. And again, if you've done any other language, this is gonna all seem very familiar. You use the class keyword and you put the name. So I always like to do class dog. Okay, and that's pretty much it. You do class dog, and then basically you define the dog in this block right here. So let's think about that. So we're going to say now whenever you have a class property, so it's a property of, or an instance property, so each individual dog has this thing, then you put one at symbol in front of it. So we're going to say at name. Well, here's what I'm going to do instead. We're going to use a constructor. So basically what happens is that generally any class in any language has what's called a constructor. It's a function that runs when the class is created. So whenever you create a dog, this function is going to run. So this way you can make the dog the way you want it. So in Ruby, it's initialize. So we define the function. So def initialize. Okay, and I'm going to want to define a name, a name for the dog. So then we do that. We're defining this function. So we're going to have a class or an instance variable of the dog's name that's going to equal whatever name is passed in. And we also are going to have a property called legs. Every dog starts off with 4 legs. Cool. And then what's going to happen is we're going to have another function called bark, which we won't pass anything into. And all this does is it puts we will put the phrase, okay, at name barks. Cool. So we defined the class. Now we can create a new class, a new instance of it. So we'll create a variable called Sparky, which will equal a dog that's new. And then we'll pass in the name of the dog. So the name of the dog will be Sparky, because that's the argument that is taken by the initialize function. Okay, so you can see it recognizes it. Okay, cool. So then what we'll do is we're going to put Sparky's name, so sparky.name, so we can access that value that way. And we will use the method sparky.bark. And make sure this all works the way we intended to. So that automatically saves. I hit up. We're going to run the file. Okay, uninitialized constant. Oh, I misspelled Sparky somewhere. Sparky. Okay. There we go. Undefined method name for dog. Okay. So the reason why we're having this problem is because the way Ruby kind of initially works is that all those instance variables are sort of initially private. So in that case, if you want to expose any of those variables to the outside world, we have to turn them into a method. And part of the reason is because when you're using this notation, as you might have noticed, is that basically Ruby always assumes that anytime you use the dot notation that it's a method. So in that case, we have to create a method that returns the data. So essentially what we would do is just do this. So if I want to be able to get the name, we'd create def name. Okay, and then basically what this function does is just return at name. And now we have access to the name because this will return that variable. There's no way for me to access this from the outside otherwise. So essentially it hides everything by default, and it's up to you to decide what you want exposed to the public, which is kind of the opposite of how most programming languages, which is actually probably not a bad way to do it, because generally you have to kind of be more deliberate to keep and then try to intentionally make things private and then kind of release things. Here it just kind of does it, so that's nice. But let's see here. Let's run that code again. Okay, and there it works. See, Sparky barks. I could use the variable inside the class definition. So long as I'm inside the class definition, I can use that variable freely at name. It's just if I want to use it outside and grab it this way, I have to create that getter function. Okay. Cool. Now let's say you wanted to do inheritance. That means I have this class, but let's say I have a small dog, and I would like to have the small dog do things that other dogs don't do, but I don't necessarily want to add those functions to the dog class, but I don't have to redefine everything I've already defined in the dog class. What then you can do is I can create class small dog, which is inheriting from dog. Okay. Cool. Cool. So let's see here. Creating a small dog class, so I should enter here. And there we have our block. And I just want to add a method that says jump into purse. Because, you know, little dogs, you oftentimes see them in purses. Jump into purse has no arguments. And it's just going to put, okay, the tiny dog jumps into the purse. Okay, so now we're going to say Sparky is, instead of being a new dog, it's a new small dog. But I still have to pass in the name because since this inherits from dog, we're still going to use dog's initialize function. Okay, so I'm still giving it a name. I'm just now going to have access to this additional function of jump into purse. So now I can also do Sparky dot jump into purse. And I don't have to put in the parentheses because it's Ruby and it'll just assume it's a method. Okay, which is kind of cool. Okay, there we go. Tiny dog jumps into purse. So yeah, that's the basics. You know, you can create all the functions you need, all the whatnot. There's other things you can do. Like if you wanted to create like a static variable, meaning a variable that belongs to the class itself. So instead it would be like, we can do something like this. You can do at dogs equals 0. And then what you can do is that every time we create a new dog, we'll just say at dogs plus equals 1. Okay, so then every time we create a dog, we should end up having, so we'll do is, and then we'll create a dog called Bobby equals dog dot new, and that one will be called Bobby. And then what we're gonna do is puts. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have complete access to this property. But let's give it a shot. I think I probably have to make a method too. But we'll say dog dot dogs. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna have to define a method for dogs. So I'm assuming it would just pretty much work the same way. Def dogs return at dogs. Okay. And define method for dogs. This is on line 28. I did define dogs. Oh, we added parentheses. I don't think that was necessary, but we'll do so anyways. Class. Def dogs. I'll make this lowercase dogs. We'll make this dogs. Oh, that's right. What I have to do is add this self dot dogs. That's what makes it a class method. So now that should work. Yep, there we go. And see, it says 2 dogs because we created 2 dogs. Every time we created a dog, it was adding 1 to that variable that belongs to the class, not to an individual dog. And then if you wanted to share one with like all classes, you use a $sign. But I can't think of many scenarios where I would want to do that. But as you can see, we can keep a counter of the total number of dogs in existence if we wanted to. With that, yeah, I think that'll end this lesson. So again, just keep in mind that whenever you're creating a class method, you have to add self dot before the name. If it's not, it's an instance method. So that dogs before should have been called on Sparky or Bobby, but I don't want Bobby and Sparky knowing how many dogs exist. That's weird that a dog is not only aware of itself, but all other dogs. But we want the idea of dogs to keep track of a counter of the total number of dogs.